Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Courageous Curiosity podcast. I am Superintendent Ben Mainka from the Novi Community School District, and today, kind of a unique show because we're going to be talking about the PTO. Sometimes they're called PTA, and then we're also going to be talking about the unique situation that we have in our school district where we have 3 school board members, one soon-to-be school board member, who sat on their PTO for their individual school buildings, and they made their way through this kind of public service volunteering into the actual boardroom. And so it's kind of an interesting trajectory that they found themselves on. And truth be told, a lot of school districts have school board members who at one time were involved some way, right, or in the PTO or the PTA, whatever organization they have. So with that being said, I want to get right to our guests. We have Ann Roney, Dr. Danielle Ruskin, and Jamie Kliebert, who is an incoming board member. And we're really excited to have all 3 of you here today. So we're going to start by just having each of you give a little bit of your elevator speech, right? So what's your kind of background working on the PTO? Talk a little bit about your experience, when your kids were, your kids are in school, your grandkids are in school, but talk a little bit about the experience you had, whether it was boosters or PTA, and give kind of like your background and how you kind of come to this place. So Ann, if we can start with you.
Sure can. I started out at Village Oaks. The Voice was called their PTO. Was on that for, my kids are 6 years apart, so was on that for quite a while. Ran the kitchen for Spring Fling. Principal Brown invited me on. He said, you have a knack. He goes, you really should do this. So I got the invitation, which, of course, always makes you feel wanted. Mm-hmm. And then from there, did Meadows. I'm not sure what theirs is called.
Well, I think Voice is one of the few that has like a special name, right? Oh. So it is the Meadows PTO, but still to this day.
Middle school, I was kind of skipped over that because my daughter was active at the high school with cheerleading, and so worked on that a lot. But I also ran the concessions for athletic boosters for about 12 years.
Okay.
So that's how I got started in that. And I just felt the need to serve. Mm-hmm. They do so much for our children that, if we give back. And I think the more people that come together, the better it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, Jamie.
I'm coming off of mostly an elementary experience. It's 9 years ago, sitting at kindergarten roundup, I got approached by someone and said, hey, would you like to be the co-president next year? And I thought, I don't even have a student at this school yet. That is crazy. And I politely declined. And that's probably the first and only time I've declined something, which I was very proud of myself for. Fast forward about 5 months, and in September, they approached me again and asked if I would be the treasurer. And that kind of fit my interest and skill set a little bit. So took that on and ran with that for 8 years. Turned it into a 501c3, wrote a lot of bylaws, and really, I think, helped transform the organization from kind of what it was to what it is today. We've quadrupled the amount of money we raise, the number of events that we do at the school. It's been a great experience. I feel like I used a lot of my business background to kind of transform where it was to where it is today, but made a lot of friends along the way, have a lot of contacts in the school with admin and teachers and the staff there, and have really gotten immersed in it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Ruskin.
Good morning.
Hey.
My children went to Deerfield Elementary, and back in the day, the PTO was called the DCC, the Deerfield Community Council.
Wow.
So now that
very formal.
But now it's the PTO, I guess. This is what I hear. Mm-hmm. So really early on, I noticed that we actually had a lot of involvement, and parents were getting involved, and they were networking, and I wanted to meet some other parents in my neighborhood. And I learned really quick that the teachers had so much responsibility that they were doing within the classroom, that the only way to offer all the different events, whether it be the fun run and fundraising for the school, which was a big fundraiser for all the elementary schools, the holiday parties, holiday shop, multicultural night, all the different things that were happening within the elementary school was with parent support. So I jumped right in, and quite frankly, it was one of the most fun leadership roles that I have had. I've always served in leadership roles in my professional associations, and so it was great to just be in the school buildings, getting to know the administration, the staff, but most importantly, just seeing those big smiles on the kids' face. So I continued on for Meadows for several years, but then as my children got older, other people stepped in and took the reins, and I am still very, very close friends with many of those parents that I've met along the way. So
yeah, all three of you mentioned this conversation in your introduction, kind of the relationships that you built along the way, right? So when you're serving, you're volunteering all of this time, you're going to events every other night, your kids are involved, and so you're getting to know the parents of the friends of your kids, right? So have this experience in serving on the PTO given kind of some of your social network a little bit? Would that be a fair statement?
I would definitely say yes. It's given not just me, but our entire family a bit of a social network, and also being involved in the PTO, you as a volunteer, as one of the board members, you get to interact with other boards through intercouncil and meet people throughout the district, which helps as you move on to different school buildings, that you don't feel isolated within your district. And I think it's important for the kids to see their parents stepping up and volunteering. It's a big value of our family, is that you get involved in your community and you serve and give back. And so that is something that we as a family has gotten out of it, not just watching me, but watching other volunteers like Jamie and Marianne and everyone else who puts time and effort into our district.
That's awesome.
And I think when the kids are younger, they think it's actually pretty cool, right? So my elementary age kids, they're like, oh, do we get to go and set up early? Whereas when you get to middle school and Meadows, that's not quite the case, but they think it's really cool that they get to be involved in an event, and to see it from a young age, you kind of start to form their culture of like, oh, this is just what we do. We're the people that show up early, or we stay late to help clean up. Yeah,
they take ownership, and they have an inside track, they feel, right? Like it's kind of, and they do, and it's cool. But you just mentioned this, and I think Marianne, you talked about this as well. When the kids get to be, say, 12 years old, they get to middle school, it's almost like there's this feeling of, okay, we don't really want to see you anymore, like coming around events. Is that a thing? Is that something that you've observed in your time serving and volunteering?
I think part of it's just the way our schools are run. So in elementary school, you can be, a mystery reader. You can come in and help with centers. You can help with picture day. There's a lot of opportunities to help during the school day, and there's a lot more, I think, just events in general. And then when you get to fifth grade, it's kind of done, right? You don't really have the holiday parties that you have parents volunteering for, and you don't have picture day helpers and just other things that we were always in the elementary for. So I think that's kind of where you see a huge drop off in volunteerism, and I think part of it's the way our schools are just set up.
Sure.
I'd like to defer to Marianne on the high school. I moved on to being on the Board of Education at that point, but she has so much experience with boosters and with concessions, which is a huge volunteer ask, that usually there's a handful of parents who do most of the work. And so I think it'd be great to hear her experience as a high school volunteer.
Yeah.
I was going to say, once you get past middle school, and actually middle school, you're actually technically part of athletic boosters at that point. So you get involved, and I mean, I can't go somewhere without seeing somebody that either worked a concession or did something with athletic boosters. So I have friendships that I've maintained for. Kids have been out of school a while now. It's for about 20 years, which is awesome. But my kids actually loved doing the booster stuff, especially the concession stands. They just thought that was great.
Yeah.
It's like I can sell candy.
Sure.
So, but it was just great.
Yeah, I think, and I've talked with whether it's our band boosters or, we have theater, arts, and drama. We have so many different groups, orchestra boosters that are more program-specific support networks. But it's almost like the kids kind of, as they get into high school, they're not as worried about the same interactions. And we actually do have a middle school PTO, which is doing some really cool things too. But when we think about the PTO, there are reasons that the PTO exists, right? There are things that the PTO can do that maybe the school district can't, or there are just other things that the teachers or the students might need, or we want to provide access to. So maybe just each of you share a little bit about why you think the PTO is important in supporting some of the things and activities that the school district does.
I think the PTO, when I look back or if you guys think back to your time in elementary school, do you remember the little lessons you had? The core memories I feel like we have from elementary school were driven by PTO events. Mm-hmm. You might remember your cakewalk or spring fling. You remember assemblies or field trips. I think back to all the events that I remember many years ago from Village Oaks or Novi Woods, and they were all PTO events. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the PTO is really important because it creates core memories for kids. Mm-hmm. I think all those lessons in the curriculum obviously are really important, but I think it's the extra events that we're able to do. The fourth graders yesterday coming over to the high school to hear the orchestra and the choir and the band perform. My kid will remember that for a really long time because it was out of the norm, and it was, again, the PTO paid for the buses for that or the field trips and things like that. So I just think it's an important part of kind of creating that extra special something for the kids at school.
That's awesome.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Jamie said, it's your PTOs do the extra stuff, that probably wouldn't get done because the teachers are so overwhelmed already. And they coordinate, like the spring fling or like the fun run, like you said, or Village Oaks used to have, and they may still have, like Madcap Puppet Theater would come in and all those cool assemblies with those creepy crawly things, The kids come
Science
home
Alive,
and they come home and they're like, "Mom, I got to hold a snake today," And I'm like, "Never in my house." So I think that's the PTO does that, as well as some like Red Ribbon Week and stuff like that. Maybe not glorious things, but they all get a red ribbon.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that it's an important aspect of the social emotional learning of our students because the teachers do have, so many minutes in the day and they have curriculum that they need to teach, and not to say that they're not offering fun opportunities for the kids within the space and the building building community within the classroom. But I think that the PTO coming in really offers like a little bit of respite for the teachers and for the staff so that they can take a breath while the kids can still enjoy things and build community within the schools. I think that there is definitely a balance between having a balanced PTO. I think if you asked any teacher, they would say PTO is amazing, but there's a little arm's length and, they're trying to do their work. And so that balance of having just that volunteerism that's not overstepping.
Well, the one thing I've been amazed by in our district is that the PTOs support our teachers in such incredible ways. I mean, just thinking about Teacher Appreciation Week or whether it's Secretary Appreciation Week, whatever it is, the staff have such support from these PTO groups. And the PTO groups can do things like host lunches or, get them little things that maybe we can't as a district support with our, dollars that have to go into the classroom and things like that. And so there are these things that are just nice perks that they may not seem like a lot on the surface, but they actually mean a lot to our staff, and it makes it so that they feel appreciated. And so, I every week I'm amazed, every Teacher Appreciation Week I'm amazed that some schools do food trucks, some have a huge buffet, some have all sorts of different things, but just their ability to support the staff on top of all of the things they do directly for students, make the PTO an invaluable partner in what we do. But one of the things I want to really ask all three of you, and this is something that's transitioning the conversation a little bit, but COVID broke a lot of things, right? So you had this idea that, before COVID, we could not help but have an abundance of volunteers, right? So I think probably Danielle and Marianne, when you were, when your kids were at the elementary and you were doing that, there were like a lot of people that wanted to be engaged in volunteering. And I think, Jamie, you're seeing at the tail end of that. And now post-COVID, it's almost like we're open and we're asking people to come in, but it's like, hey, you told me to stay away during COVID, and so now I'm good. I've found other things to do. We're finding when I talk to the high school band, orchestra, athletic, even the existing current PTO groups at the elementaries, it's very difficult to find parents that are engaging in that level of volunteerism. So maybe share a little bit about your thoughts about why that might be. What do you think has created some of those barriers? Have we as a school, society as a school, I mean, not just us, but because this is a situation across the educational landscape, but what is it that's detracting from the desire for volunteerism and getting engaged?
I think when in doubt, like you said, blame COVID.
Yeah.
But during COVID, all of our events went away. And
Sure.
I think that a lot of times you engage parents at a younger age, so kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and we lost all of that engagement. Those parents are now fourth, fifth, sixth grade. We've brought these events back, but nobody wants to chair an event they've never been to. They're
Sure.
a little nervous about it. They're not familiar with it. So I think that's one of the big things. I think another thing is people don't realize the impact they have when they're volunteering at an event. It might just be the impact to their child, but they don't see the impact that they have to the school. So making them aware of that sometimes is easy as just appreciating them. If you or the principal was like, hey, thanks so much for that. That made a big difference. I think just a little thing like that makes it help as well. I do think it's a cultural change in our community too. I think that if you start at kindergarten roundup and you say to all these parents, hey, we expect all these families to volunteer 2 to 3 times a year. It could be on a parent advisory board, it could be at a PTO event, it could be at your kid's holiday party, but we want you to volunteer 3 times this year. You say it again at curriculum night, you post it make a catchy slogan and post it in the office at the school. But if you change the culture of this community of like, you come into Novi schools with the expectation that you are going to volunteer at some point. We can't mandate it, but you can certainly encourage it. But I think if you change the culture where starting from kindergarten on, it just becomes part of the norm instead of the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jamie pointed out some things. First, we need to ask. Or voluntel. Sounds like that's the road
strategy.
she was going down.
Yeah.
But yeah, just setting a culture and the expectation. I think giving people options. I think we do have parents who work. We have double income families within our district, and they think, well, I have a full-time job, or I'm at the office during the day, or doing whatever other responsibilities I have, and I don't have time. So providing different opportunities, that it doesn't always have to be during the school day. There are events that happen in the evening, and so if you can't help with the planning, maybe you can help with the implementation of those events. So I really think it's more just engaging people and finding out where they're at and meeting them where they're at, and then just appreciating them and saying, even if you can only give just a tiny bit of time, it doesn't have to always be an all-in to be a valuable asset to our volunteer core group.
Yeah, both of you mentioned we need to ask, and I do wonder sometimes if there's an assumption that people will just come volunteer, but sometimes people don't even know what the needs are, right? So if it's like, if I'm not there, and then another part of it's, of course, communication and who's actually reading their emails these days and everything else, right? So I know that those are all factors. What do you think, Marianne?
I think the ask is a big thing because that's how I've really got involved in everything, with boosters. My neighbor across the street was going to be president, so he asked me, and that's how that started. Of course, with Principal Brown, I was asked there too as well. I also think a lot of people they've filled their calendar a lot with some social media time. So, you look at it, it's like, oh, I'm so busy, but yet you have that hour for social media, But I've seen some teachers where they'll, first couple of days they have that list. This is what I need. I need 2 people to represent us from PTO. I need this, that. And I find that gets a good response because they can see, oh, gosh, I didn't realize you need all of this. And there are stuff that the parents can do at home, cut things or whatever, help the teacher out. So.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate that. And I think going back to something that Dr. Ruskin, you said was that, you and your family have, kind of established that the ideal is we're going to serve in our community, right? That's kind of like a family expectation. And not that we're going to solve this, here or, change the culture necessarily of society in general, but it's just kind of an interesting and curious pontification, right? So, the further that we withdrew from in-person events and having these things, the more we became kind of sucked into our own personal vacuum where we're on social media more, we're doing those things. And so now when it's like, hey, come back in and hey, come back and engage socially in these things, it's like, I don't know. And so it's interesting because I do think society in general has become more selfish. We've become more focused on ourselves than about other people and what it might mean to give or to serve. And so I think the 3 of you are great examples of people who have made the commitment to serve. But, certainly we need to have discussions about how to shift the culture to make it aware that other people matter, other people, have needs, and we want to recognize and celebrate them. And so there's something truly healthy for our mental well-being and our just wellness overall when we serve, right? It's not just about the people that we're doing it for. There's actually an intrinsic and genuine benefit that we find and that our kids will find from doing that as well. I want to kind of transition just for a second. Being on the PTO, you do a lot of things. You're basically the person who's the go-to. You're in the buildings. If you're on the boosters, you're doing concessions, right? You're doing. The roles that you now are holding are governance positions, right? Now you are on a school board. So the PTO board and the school board, very different things, totally different shifts. So talk a little bit about the dynamic or the nuance between the two and how the school board is a little bit different or a lot different.
I feel it's a lot different because, in the PTO, you're hands-on, you're doing this, and then when you get to the school board, it's you're coming up with, not coming up with ideas, but you're talking about ideas, how to make the student, their curriculum or this better, and you don't really go into the weeds. We say this is what we'd like to do, and then you implement it, So, but I find it so rewarding that at the end of that time, like, Meadows School, right? I mean, it's an awesome school.
Yeah.
And wow, I had something to do with that.
Yeah,
So, you just feel so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I was thinking about our conversation today, and really it is, you go from a planning, implementation, operational lens of fun. Not that the school board isn't fun,
Sure.
but
We're pretty fun.
we're pretty fun. Not as fun, though. Let's all
that's
admit
true.
it.
It's not as
fun. Yeah. To governance, and you are big picture, overarching. You're looking at strategic planning, you're looking at vision, you're helping implement the future of the district, and policy and fiduciary responsibilities and all of those things. But you really don't get to get in there and help make it happen. That's your job and your team's job and the staff. And so you do have to take a step back, and it takes a little bit of time to reacclimate yourself to your new role. But once you get there and you get settled in, it's just as rewarding, but just in a different way.
Sure.
Well, I haven't gotten to that role yet, but I think the biggest change for me will be I'm an executor, a doer very task-oriented. Let's plan this event. Let's invite people. Let's clean up from it. And the school board is obviously very different from that. So that'll be a big adjustment for me as well. Going from the details and the weeds, like you said, Marianne, to big picture stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as we kind of close out our time, certainly what we hope is anybody watching this show, any parents in our community, we want you to be involved in some way, shape, or form. This is a tremendous opportunity to get engaged, be involved in the lives of your children and what they're getting into and what they're doing at school. But I'll let any of the three of you or all three of you just closing comments and thoughts and anything you'd like to leave people with.
I just think it's very rewarding to volunteer, and you get that feel-good little boost out of it. So I would recommend anybody volunteer for anything. Classroom time, PTO, boosters, anything.
I'm a very data-driven person, and it's statistically shown that when you volunteer, it improves your kids' performance in school. When you're active, when you're there, and your kids see that, I don't care what age it is, if you're working the concession while your kid is playing a sport, or if you're cutting out hearts at a Valentine's Day party in elementary school, your kids see that, and it really, really impacts them.
It's awesome.
I want to go back and cut out hearts at a Valentine's party. I think that they would have me. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I think that we are so blessed here in this community, both as parents, our students are blessed, the staff, everybody who just really engages in this community. And so, taking that extra step and being a part of this community from a hands-on position will serve you well as a person. Not only, like you pointed out, Ben, we're giving and getting. So the more you give, the more that you get. And so I think it's really important to just find a small little token of time that you can step foot. You might want to put a toe in. You might want to jump in with both feet, like Jamie over there and Marianne did years ago. But we all put a little piece of the puzzle together. And so I would encourage people to reach out to teachers, principals, neighbors, and just say, how can I help? And, this conversation has revitalized me just a tiny bit. Once you step out of that space, you kind of get stuck in your, I sit at the board table and there's work to be done there, but it's encouraged me to reach out to maybe the younger people, younger parents, even the parents who are in the middle school and the high school, to ask them to get involved.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to all three of you. You're just a blessing to our school system and to our community. Appreciate all the hours that you donate. And for those of you watching the show, get involved. Don't sit on the sidelines. There's plenty of things to get engaged with here in the district. And thank you so much for your time today. Hope everyone stays curious, and I hope everybody has a happy holidays.